In this lesson, we're going to talk about password cracking. You're going to run across instances where you can get hold of the password file, but of course, passwords aren't stored in clear text. And in subsequent lessons, we'll get into how passwords are actually stored. Let's just say they're not stored in clear text, and you need to be able to do something in order to get a clear text password from these password files. So the first thing that we're going to look at is the little play on, of course, Jack the Ripper, the famous serial killer. It's called John the Ripper. The first thing I'm going to do is grab a copy of the password file that includes the encrypted passwords in it so that I can run John. So I've got my password file. I'm actually going to copy that into this directory where I've got my word lists. So I'm going to go into this word list directory here. Now, the thing about password cracking is it's not like, the movies where you just run through all of these things and very quickly you get a password. That can take a really, really long time, and probably a lot longer than your lifetime, in order to check through all of the various permutations and combinations of letters and characters and numbers. And so what we do is we create a word list of potential passwords, and then we go through the process of creating a password from it. In other words, doing the same process that you would use to store your password. So we're going to do a cryptographic hash of it. And then we compare the two hashes in order to see whether they match or not. And if they match, we know what the plain text password was, because that's what we used to create the hash. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run John, and I've got my word list, and it's called all.lst, and I'm going to run that against my password file that I created up above. So what it's going to be doing here is running through all of the passwords in that file and checking them against the password file and seeing whether they match. And this could take quite a while. And so you're going to want to just let this run for hours and hours, if not potentially days. Doing this password ripping or password cracking can take quite a while. One thing that can help get around that is using something called rainbow tables. Now, rainbow tables are pre-computed hash tables that save the computation time of doing the hash on all of the passwords as you go through them. So here's a program called OPH Crack that's a free Windows password cracker, and it uses rainbow tables. So you can use this OPH Crack that you could download all over the internet, and you can use those tables with OffCrack in order to hopefully get some quicker times to get your passwords cracked. There's no guarantee, because if the password isn't in the list of words that you're checking, then you're not going to crack the password. And that's one of the places where complexity is really important when it comes to creating passwords. If you're just using a regular word, even if you, say, capitalize the first letter, there's a good chance that that may be in a word list somewhere that somebody can crack. Which is why typically you'll see strong passwords recommending a combination of symbols and letters and numbers, as well as upper and lower case. If you do enough complexity and add enough variability to your password, you're not going to see that in a password cracker word list, probably, and it's going to make your password very difficult to crack, because what they would have to do would be to do a real, honest-to-goodness brute force where they do check all of the potential permutations and combinations. That's also why a longer password is better, because, of course, the more positions you put into a password, the longer it's going to take to brute force. The other thing is that word lists are often kind of up to 8 characters, because that's traditionally been sort of a standard password length. So if you make it a little bit longer, you make your password harder to crack and harder to find. So OffCrack here runs on Windows, Linux, and Mac OS. You'll see you can also get free tables for Windows XP and Vista And when you download Offcrack, you'll be able to get those rainbow tables to go with that particular program. Another utility, though, that runs under Windows, Cain and Abel, is another password cracker. It does different things, though. So I could load the secrets from my Windows system. And you can see I'm pulling in the password file here. And I could run Cain against that to see whether it can crack them. We can also look for wireless passwords. It'll dump out your Internet Explorer passwords, as well as different edit boxes. It can do some sniffing on your network to be able to find passwords there. It also has the ability to do ARP poisoning, which means it can actually get a lot of data coming into it that you wouldn't normally have. So you can run this as a sniffer to go grabbing passwords and see what it can find on the network. There's a lot of different types of passwords that it supports. You'll see up above there's VNC and VPN. There's some base64 password decoders that it supports, Access Database password decoder, and a Cisco Type 7 password decoder, because Cisco stores passwords in their configuration files on their routers and switches in a particular format, and it's possible to break that and recover passwords that are stored in that Cisco 7 password format. You can decrypt WEP encrypted messages, and we'll get into some wireless in subsequent lessons. Cain and Abel supports a lot of different ways to grab passwords, both locally and remotely. So that's 3 different utilities that you could use to capture passwords and crack passwords in some different formats.